Welcome back to This Explainer. Okay, so we spend our entire lives heavily relying on our eyes, right? I mean, seeing is believing, as they say. But what happens when that visual world gets completely shut off? Today, we're unpacking a really wild paradox. We're looking into the life of a man who lost his physical sight entirely, but, and here's the crazy part, he claims he can perceive the world way more deeply now. We're going to dive deep into sensory perception, a bit of yoga science, and this fascinating phenomenon known as clairaudience. Okay, let's dive right into this. Just listen to this quote. "Although I'm completely blind, I can see more than what you can see." Now, this bold statement comes directly from Osman, often known as the Blind Muslim Yogi. And what makes his story so incredibly compelling is that he hasn't been blind his whole life. Actually, he had totally normal eyesight right up until May of 2023. So when he describes things, he uses the exact same visual terms that you and I do because he knows what the physical world looks like. But now, he navigates his entire life completely in the dark. So who exactly is Osman? Well, he brings a pretty unique and highly specialized background to the table. He is a master-level telepathic energy healer, really focusing on critical care and serious recovery, as well as an advanced yoga and meditation teacher with decades of practice. Like we mentioned, he's been 100% blind since May 2023, which makes his journey profoundly personal. And by the way, if you're curious about his methods, you can actually go to his website, yogawellness786.com. He's got a completely free 5-minute yoga and meditation program available to download right there. It's all about using a scientific approach to help people harness their natural energy. Now, before we get into the really metaphysical stuff, we need to establish a responsible baseline here. Osman is super clear about where his practice fits in the modern world. He emphasizes that his work, these natural-based therapies, are designed to enhance your body's natural energy and boost your immunity. But, and this is absolutely crucial, he is adamant that they do not replace licensed medical treatment. If you've got a serious condition, consulting a doctor is always step one. Basically, his approach is completely complementary. It's there to enhance medical care, not replace it. All right, so let's get into the core topic of this explainer, clairaudience. From a yoga science perspective, clairaudience isn't just, having really good hearing. Not at all. It's defined as the capacity to hear voices or entities operating on totally different frequencies, or even from parallel universes. Seriously, it is auditory perception that operates way, way beyond our standard biological human hearing. So you're probably wondering, how on earth do you even begin to access an ability like that? Well, Osman outlines two very distinct paths. Path 1, having the ability imparted to you almost instantly by a psychic teacher or entity, kind of like a sudden, forced third eye awakening. But path 2, and this is the one Osman strongly advocates for, is the incremental practice through traditional yoga science. He views the slow, disciplined, gradual growth of your intuition as the much safer, much more manageable route. Let's move to and see how this actually builds in practice. Here is the step-by-step methodology Osman uses for perceiving things on this level. Step 1, you have to completely, 100% clear your mind. Honestly, that's the hardest part, right? But once you get that pure silence, you move to step 2, intensely focusing your intention on another person. And then step 3 is where the magic happens. Because your own internal chatter is totally silenced, when a new thought or impression suddenly drops in, you can instantly differentiate it. You know for a fact it's not just your brain jumping around, you're actually catching the frequency of the person you're focusing on. Now, to reach that master level of total silence, Osman's past dedication was, well, it was staggering. We're talking 16 to 18 hours of meditation per day. He pushed his mind and his physical body to the absolute limits, attaining profound states of consciousness, like his first samadhi experience at just 19 years old. But quick caveat here, he absolutely does not recommend this extreme marathon approach for his students today. Actually, scratch that. You don't need anywhere near that. Nowadays, he advises just 20 to 30 minutes a day to safely practice these skills. But going back to those marathon sessions, pushing himself that incredibly hard actually shattered a perceptual barrier. He describes how, seemingly out of nowhere, a door just opens to parallel universes. It wasn't just a sense of inner peace. He literally started hearing voices. And get this, once the entities in these parallel frequencies realized, oh hey, he can actually hear us, they started crowding around him, super eager to communicate. Now I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a horror movie scenario, right? Just super eerie. But Osman says it wasn't like that at all. In fact, he said, wait till you meet some of these higher frequency entities. They are much more funny than stand-up comedians. No way, right? He'd actually find himself busting out laughing in the middle of a completely silent room because these entities were cracking hilarious jokes. He'd literally have to wave off confused people around him and just pretend he remembered a funny memory. But look, let's be real for a second. Suddenly hearing voices in an empty room obviously brings up some very real concerns about mental health and sanity. Osman is fully aware of how that sounds. But because of his deep grounding in a scientific approach to yoga, he understood exactly the mechanics of what was happening. He explains that advanced pranayama, which are very specific, highly disciplined yogic breathing techniques, acts as a built-in safeguard. He argues that if you are correctly practicing advanced pranayama, experiencing genuine psychosis is highly unlikely because the practice naturally grounds your entire nervous system.
Still, even with friendly voices and a grounded nervous system, this constant influx of audio became just way too much. It was completely disrupting his daily life. So he was faced with a tough choice: endure this constant sensory overload or shut it down. And he chose to shut it down. Because he had trained his mind so rigorously over the decades, he was able to formulate one powerful, hyper-focused thought demanding it to stop. And boom, just like that, he closed the door. To this day, he actively chooses not to engage with those entities because he prefers to experience the world just like the rest of us do.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive difference in how we process the world, especially since Osman lost his physical sight. For those of us with sight, our perception is honestly just bombarded constantly. We take in the visual environment, the colors, the facial expressions. It's a constant information overload. But Osman's blind perception, all that visual distraction is completely gone. When someone speaks to him, he performs this laser-focused audio analysis. He picks up on micro-fluctuations in your tone, subtle nuances, and extracts a way deeper meaning from a single sentence than a sighted person ever could. In fact, Osman poses a really fascinating theory about this. He believes that for those of us with normal eyesight, our reliance on the visual world is so heavy that our other senses are completely neglected. We become a jack-of-all-trades, master of none when it comes to our senses. But because his visual input is completely removed, his remaining senses, especially his hearing and his energetic intuition, have reached an absolute state of mastery. His experience of just hearing someone talk is infinitely richer because his brain isn't busy trying to process the lighting in the room or the color of your shirt. Which brings us to the slightly intimidating but totally brilliant warning from Osman. When you're talking to blind people, just be careful. For sure, they can read your mind. Seriously. Because they aren't distracted by your visual cues, they decode the absolute truth hidden in your audio frequency. It doesn't matter how much you try to fake your tone, they will catch the slightest hesitation, the tiniest misstep. They analyze the audio data so deeply that your true thoughts and intentions become basically transparent to them. Bringing it back to the actual practice of developing these deeper skills, Osman leaves us with a pretty strict warning. He constantly contrasts the safety of gradual intuition growth against a cold turkey third eye awakening. He strongly cautions against seeking out gurus who promise to instantly rip open your perception to the spirit world. Sure, it sounds exciting, but throwing yourself into the deep end like that can be incredibly overwhelming. Because once that door is forcibly kicked open, it is exceptionally hard to close if you haven't put in the foundational work to manage your own mind first. As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. What more could you truly perceive if you learn to shut out the visual noise? Osman's incredible journey from a sighted yogi to a blind master healer really challenges us to consider that our eyes might actually be limiting our understanding of reality. By just quieting our minds and focusing our internal senses, we might discover a much richer, deeper world hiding right in front of us. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, keep exploring.